because I've already got quite a lot. I would be happy to import it next cycle if you can wait, but...
Okay. Ask about, we had the proposed process we started talking about. Would it be prudent to start talking about opening the +1 release sooner than after the current release? So,
yeah, we can't right now. You end up doing a lot of sort of wheel spinning, propagating forward. You end up trying to sort of do a little mini merge in between. And I think there are some problems with getting a package ancestry right in Launchpad that cause problems. I don't know, my feeling has always been that if you open it before the actual release, then it divides development too much.
Right, but there are certain freeze points where we, in a sense, already do that, except the people who want to work on the next version just don't work for a while.
No, they can do it in PPAs, and we do that too much.
We talked about opening backports early last release, but there was some Launchpad work that needed to be done for that kind of was never done, so that didn't happen. But I mean, that might solve the problem there. So we rebuild those packages.
I think the concern of opening +1 before release is that we'll actually end up having the buildies doing build for +1 when we might want to have them available for +23 springs instead.
Yeah. And also, it doesn't really force you to stop working. I mean, you can still put stuff in the PPA.
Yeah, sure, you can. Yeah, and that's
right.
What I think people are mostly doing anyway. You can already commit stuff to the UDD branch, so have that ready for upload whenever.
So, like, it seems like an unnecessary diversion of attention, even. I mean, technical problems aside. But,
I think many project flavor teams made better use of PPAs this cycle as a working area. I know we said he did, and I know a couple of other teams did that.
Okay, so is there some actions we want to take out on this one? There's a session on freeze use of proposed already. And some of this discussion might belong there, but do we want another session, or do we want to basically start exploring this later in the week, or not? What's the action? Does anyone have any feelings and recommendations on this subject? Do we need a session later in the week to discuss this further, or can we fold it into the proposed discussion?
Sorry. +1.
The backport sessions.
Oh, the backport stuff.
And the backports and basically getting things before we open up the archive again.
We don't need a session, it just needs...
I think it's the, opening +1, I think we don't want that to happen anyway.
Okay.
And backports is already supposed to happen and just didn't because of technical limitations.
The work needs to be done, it doesn't need discussion, it just needs
Okay.
work. So that's the why. The why there is, it just needs
FDI.
Launchpad work. So whoever...
Okay. Right. Fine. Okay, so policies need to be standardized and proposed. There's a session for that already on the books. So I don't know if we need to couch too much more on that one here. There was a request for some generic view of the test coverage on top of the daily results. And I think in the ISO tracker we've got proposals for some of that.
Thanks. Yeah, that was to add some to be able to fit down dates. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can talk about this afternoon and the ISO tracker session.
Okay.
I think I've got a bug for it. If I don't, whoever added the item, I should just fire that.
Okay.
Is this a good time to bring up suggestions about using when I was using the ISO tracker, or is
The session this afternoon will be the best time.
there's a session just on the ISO tracker?
Session just on the ISO tracker.
I think we actually have two sessions. We've got one for test case management in the ISO tracker and the other one for ISO tracker itself. Or another session for using the ISO tracker for testing, I think. That's QA registered on how to improve ISO testing.
Yeah.
So one of these three.
next issue that's come up on the whiteboard from the feedback is Jeremy's, in the sense that we talked about this last time in terms of how the release schedules formatted for the days within a week, because everything's on Thursday. And we had Tuesday confusion again.
With the language packs.
Language packs.
Deadline, also
Yep.
the translators were a bit confused.
Yes.
I thought the change that was made and then of course we reverted was excellent. The one that had multiple rows, one for each day, seemed entirely clear and reasonable.
So you want to go, basically, if people are reasonably in agreement, we'll just go that direction, we'll try that direction this
Yeah,
time
I
around?
also thought it was much clearer seeing Tuesday and Thursday.
As multiple days? Okay, fine.
So,
That's fine. Okay, so we revisit the format and we just go forward with that, okay? Easy.
Keep.
Fine. I will reformat that, I'll take the action to go through and reformat that one. Then we have the discussion about the habit of the UTC time, the corresponds to release version. Fine.
I only did that for 10:10.
No, we did for this one.
Yeah, we got the date.
12:04, yeah.
12:04 the date.
I think I was incorrect in thinking that we'd done it for 11:04
No.
and 11:10, but I do think it was a mistake this time around. I'll grant that James said that the website comments wouldn't have been helped, but we did know before 12:04 that the website was screwed, or at least there were some.
we didn't.
I did. I had certainly seen reports by that point that the website was having trouble, but it was obvious that there was a trend.
Well, the rest of the
Nobody
release
wants to be.
didn't know.
Nobody wants. If you set a time in advance, nobody wants to see the. Nobody wants to be the person who says we can do it. We shouldn't set a time in advance. Instead, we should go. No.
So the only
Roger was quite
thing that we have
surprised
to
that we
watch
did.
out for here with this is that there was press. And basically the press had been lined up, and they need to have a window to basically line up for. And the fact, and some of that juggling that happened basically caused some of the feedback on the
But
press
the-
side. They don't have to revisit their processes.
But the press
So we
were
need
actually
to-
told
I
2
do think we
p.m.
need to revisit that.
Yeah, okay.
The press were told 2 p.m. I thought.
No, they were,
Some of them preempted it.
Yeah.
They were preempted at 12 o'clock.
Right, some people have always preempted.
Which
I'm
they
less
will.
worried. I'm less worried about whether it went due to jump the gun, and more about making
No,
sure that
not OMG, but they followed everybody else.
there's a tech crunch or somebody who
Something like
posted
that.
early. But it's
But they
not.
were
It's not the end of
immediately
the world if somebody posted early.
But regarding the website issues, I don't think the rest of the release team room knew there were
It
issues.
had been mentioned in IRC. We talked about it.
Did you pick up? Because
I
Well, I
picked up
wasn't
there
aware
was,
of
there's
it.
tension. I picked up there was issues potentially, and some people were seeing it work, and other people weren't, and then basically there was a cost chop, and
We had.
We had-
So
When
we're
we get back to Colin's basic point, which
Yes.
is that when there's like a certain time that people are shooting for, maybe people
okay.
unnecessarily rush at the last minute, or if you just wait 10 minutes to solve one more thing, or whatever. I'm not necessarily agreeing with Colin, I just thought, rather than specific points about the website,
Yeah.
Colin's making more.
Right. That is more my point.
Right, and like I say, at this point in time, I'm fine.
But
We
I
tried the
think it's-
experiment, we actually made it close.
I think it's useful to also, we're about cadence, having the target time that we're shooting for, and also say like, we don't have time for another respin, like this is what we're going for.
Yeah, I'm
So there's-
certainly not saying we shouldn't aim for that day. Just that I think you can take cadence a little bit too far.
well, the balance of both worlds is to have a guide. We are aiming for this time, but if issues come up, then it's easy enough just to delay, right?
And
I mean-
users are expecting us to do that anyway. It's not.
Yeah. I mean, we had a last minute respin like hours before, didn't we?
Right.
And
I'm not quite sure where
Though, is that
the
we need to
impression
have
came from that we would release at 12:04. So, like,
It was just basically, we were a precise release. It was, it seemed achievable the day before, that we could probably try to hit that. Everything was lining up in the morning. When I checked in the morning, it still looked good. Okay, let's try for it. And basically, there was also commentary that releases were getting boring, we needed a little bit more sizzle. So, was everybody okay?
I mean, it certainly was true in the sense that the Ubuntu release party only had like 300 people this time, but it used to be 1,000. But yeah.
Well, there's more tension there.
Well, actually, Colin, you raised a good point there. Did we actually find out what the problem was with the torrents? I mean,
Yes. Yeah.
has that been resolved for ongoing releases?
There's still a bug in the release script files. So we had more than usual skew between architectures this time around. There was a separate respin just for MB64, which meant that basically every flavor was out of sync between MB64 and i386. That exposed a bug which we hadn't really noticed before, had maybe worked around the problem, but in the CD image scripts, which was that if you, in some cases, or some of the places it publishes to, only the last set of publications that were done would be kept. So if you did a batch of MD64 publications and then in a separate run a batch of i386 publications, then only the i386 ones would be kept.
But that's all resolved now, then?
That's all of the... I fixed up everything on the site.
Yeah.
The scripts still have this bug, and I would like work item to fix that. Because I still just about have it in my head what went wrong, so I'd like to fix it while I remember.
Sure. Okay, so I'm going to take an action to basically work with the press team on different ideas for the embargoes, and then basically before we hit the next release, basically brief the release team as to what the plan is going forward, so everyone's on the same page, and hopefully that'll minimize confusions.
I mean,
I would really like to make sure that we have a habit of, before we push go, having a go around everybody to say go or no go, and without a sort of predisposed answer.
Okay.
I mean, the thing is we do need to remember that the actual platform side of things was actually quite smooth. As in, you know, we knew the day before that things were good. There was no rushing around panicking.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that everything was totally doomed.
Yeah.
But there were a few flaws that were avoidable and that we should avoid in the future, because that's the point of this, to learn from our mistakes last time.
Can I ask, we seem to have discussion every release, but around release day, the mirrors and everything get really slow. Somebody shined it off as an unavoidable problem, but are we doing everything we can to scale them up on release day for a couple of days?
So about 2 days before release, there was a mystery heavy bandwidth usage. The canonical infrastructure, they were seeing huge spikes in traffic, and that probably didn't help the experience because it was just phantom track they couldn't locate. So if
I pulled up for the archive flatline before release. Did they ever figure out why?
I don't think they did.
Also, because
so I'm asking, in a sense, Canonical throw a bunch of money at temporary servers before.
We do, yeah.
Right, and
So they get served from Amazon.
Right,
Yeah.
but how come it still seems to not be enough?
I think we need IS people in the room to be able to
I think this
answer
is a discussion for a night.
But there were some vendor provision delays this last time. I don't know if their plans for the other guy went forward, but it was easy.
and also because we have now almost all images on CD image, this is a lot less well mirrored, so I guess this contributed to the congestion there.
I think I added
especially Ubuntu images, which got added there now. And
I think I added a point somewhere later on in the blueprint on CD image for the over every single release, because now everything pretty much is on CD image. I did a mirror this time around to actually see what kind of views we get on it, and my mirror has been pushing at 4 gigabit speed since release, and it's still not done. So we definitely have, and it was just mirroring Ubuntu and Ubuntu and linked on the official announcement. So
everyone
we get a lot of traffic that we simply can't serve currently.
So like Ubuntu USB images and whatnot.
So we might want to make it easier for people to mirror CD image. I think that was later on.
We also might want to make it much easier for users to find torrents. In my opinion, the torrents should be what the press articles are linking to, and it should be right there next to the download link.
This time around, I'm kind of glad we did it. There's the group.
Yes. In theory, the torrents are relieve the pressure.
So the problem with mirroring CD images, it's full of daily rules and stuff like that. So as a mirror admin, you just don't want to mirror it. It seems like a completely useless thing to mirror.
That's my point. We should make it easier to just mirror the release directory on it.
Well,
Because currently I'm writing a big shell script that mirrors all the subdirectories I actually want. But I'm guessing some more people really want to mirror just the release directory from CDS.
And we should have announced to the to the releases mirrors that, by the way, what we mirror is CD image will cycle because everything's moving there.
So I think the action there is to try to make it easier for other people to bring up temporary CD image mirrors.
Or even permanent ones.
So we do have rsync modules for those.
Yes.
Does that help the people who are doing this mirroring to provide an rsync module that is just for release directories on CD image?
That would be lovely.
Yes, the trick is we've got a top level release directory that's
Right,
called
but I'm saying, I understand that.
Okay, so moving that
I'm saying
around.
you can have
Yes.
rsync server-side thing that specifies only these.
Sure.
So
I would have saved 2 or 3 hours of work if I had that.
So would we pre-publish them or not?
This is stuff that doesn't, we're talking about the release images that are on CD image. So we don't have pre-publishing, we don't have full rate like that. I mean, those actually tend to be, I think, actually pushed out the CD image slightly in advance of releases.
This time they came out well after the release.
Not a lot, like 2 or 3 hours before.
I only saw Ubuntu and Ubuntu quite late.
So there may have been difficulties.
Yeah, there's
seeing
staging,
the
because
application.
there's just enough demand on things slow
I know
down.
how to wait quite a bit before actually add the final indexes that I could async to have the right checksums and stuff for Ubuntu at least. And that took a while to show up.
Okay, it looks like we've got some areas to work on there. The next one going forward is there are some calls for manual testing that were put out that was asking for people to basically start testing like once a week, like every week, basically start testing the images at the start of the month to try to get better coverage. And that was underwhelming in terms of the results. And so as a result, we went into freeze with not quite as much QA done on some of the images that we wanted to see.
By QA, you mean
Manual
testing as defined by the ISO trackers?
Manual testing is defined by the ISO trackers, and the mandatory testing is defined by our release criteria. So we really hadn't had to add as much smoke testing as we needed on some of these other cases, and so that showed up some issues with certain platforms, and that was most of the churn that was happening after we hit final freeze.
The mandatory testing as defined by the release criteria, that's in the ISO tracker, right?
Yes.
So Nick, like, we're planning on juicing.
So part of that is having, obviously we had a call, or several calls, but we had them sort of in the cycle, and so that wasn't necessarily planned from the beginning. So there is a blueprint around what I call sustained and scheduled testing for this next upcoming cycle.
Good. Okay, can you put the link to that blueprint
Yeah,
in here underneath so that people who are interested can go and follow the discussions there? That's exactly what we're trying to get to.
Have you been following test drives, by the way?
What's that?
A test drive. Have you been following that?
Test drive.
Yeah. We'll talk about afterwards.
All right.
Okay, then the next issue on here was the images pushed to CloudFront were out of date.
I think that's a checklist item.
Okay.
We should have known that and forgot about it.
Okay.
Just too many things going on.
Yes.
That's not on the release checklist.
No, that's what he's saying. Add this to the release checklist. Okay.
And that the effect of that was that I think just the AMD64 images and possibly some of the DVDs were wrong from what people saw on release.image.com because that was redirected to CloudFront. So we had quite a lot. Anybody who was paying attention enough to verify the checksums noticed that there was a problem. Anybody who didn't got a pre-release image and thought it was 12.4.
Then upgraded.
And then upgraded, but the reason that we did that respin is that there was a bug in the session installer that meant if you attempted to do media installation before you did an update, then things went bizarrely wrong on AMD64. So people may have had a less good impression.
Can this publication be automated for the future?
I did say ideally it should be automated.
Well, the people that would know that aren't here, I'm afraid.
So that was, I don't quite know why that isn't treated as a normal push mirror of CD image, just with a specialized sync script that only syncs a few things. I think it should be, but at the moment they apparently put it manually. So yeah, really I'd love to be. Sorry.
I mean, ideally, cloud image should be able to publish a Fusion script from there, really, I would have said.
Yeah, I mean, we've certainly got plenty of sync scripts lying around. I don't think it's hard for IS to write.
Right.
It just isn't done.
Well, they basically, one of the things was they basically started doing a full review of their processes after this happened, and I think we'll sync up with them.
Right, we just need to know first.
Okay, the next one was the CD image release scripts don't have good handling of situation where they're releasing different build numbers on different architectures.
That's the one we talked about a moment ago. I'd just like to work on it to fix that.
Okay. Okay. Yes, so the Chinese images.
Which I might point out I still have not had a go on.
Oh, so we still haven't tested yet?
Well,
I just heard today.
Well, Gary said
Gary
said the half-hearted
Gary sent a
go.
mail saying go, so I can actually release those.
Well, he did say go now, because like the one that I was reading, it said like, okay, let's go ahead if it's.
Have they logged the results on the localized ISO tracker?
I have no idea, but he has sent me a mail saying go. So
who's the product owner of the Chinese?
I realise that, but we're days past the deadline when it should have been gone.
Can you copy me on
They haven't logged any of it in ISO tracker.
So who's the product owner of the Chinese edition?
PES.
Who is?
PES.
Okay, well, they need to be represented.
That's another
because
point.
there's been something that none of us have.
No, we don't really have anyone on the platform team speaking Chinese and being able to evaluate whether this is good.
Yeah.
So we can boot it and see. Yeah, I cannot read it. It's probably Chinese, but like this doesn't tell us whether like input support is correctly configured, whether the home page makes sense, and
or even if the strings fit together in the correct order.
Yeah, or whether it looks totally bogus there.
Actually, now false. I don't want to our team speak Chinese to the QA person.
Yeah. As of what, last week or the week before?
Yeah, but the thing is, the product owner still needs to report to the release team, right?
Right.
And that's not happening at the moment.
I've sent him that.
So yeah, so the bug that caused the Chinese images to be not Chinese anymore, that was introduced like somewhere mid-February or so. So basically that says like nobody tested these images in 2 months or so.
This is actually quite infuriating to me, because it seems like that would be incredibly easy to automate. Like that's the core thing that it adds.
It would be very simple to do. I mean, check what locale is set and whether the language packs are installed and none of these were.
Yeah, but it's still quite
when language packs were there, code was wrong by default, and we didn't have the browser configuration.
Yeah, like the
Ubuntu
default
was fine if you selected Chinese manually.
Yeah, like the Ubuntu default package wasn't installed.
Yes, it was human, but the things that we failed to catch did not.
Yeah. Okay, so the action is basically to work with Victor and that team to find out who's going to be representing these things going forward.
And also perhaps add this to automatic daily testing.
And add it to automatic daily testing. Yep, fine.
Because so it was
test every single morning.
Well, it was quite a non-trivial bug in the end, so it wasn't quite clear why it wasn't installing this, and it took quite a while to debug, and it released crunch time.
So it would have been nice to catch it in February.
Yeah, exactly.
What is PES?
What used to be called OEM services.
All right. Okay.
So, is there anyone here from PES or from QA?
There is a blueprint to expand smoke testing to 100% coverage, so I'm guessing that will follow.
Well,
So someone can give you
no,
an action
I'll
item.
take the action to basically go and cater it here,
But I guess adding the Chinese image to the
to get an owner identified.
Jenkins test shouldn't be too hard, right?
Yeah. Going to the data testing, though, we do need it to go into a blueprint.
Can you just do that? Okay. So Jim will settle just add to the daily
Okay.
ISO testing.
Sure. Okay. Then we tried an experiment of attempting to use the milestones to move images. That was a failure. It didn't work out in practice.
Utterly confusing.
Well, if we hadn't, like I said, it was an attempt to basically signal things done. It didn't work.
It was confusing, but it did have the benefit we got from it was that it made it really easy to do the final publish image set run, because I knew that everything that the command printed out had been signed off and didn't need to go manually check it. So, yeah, it was confusing, but there were.
It was aiming to some good goals.
One of the proposals so far is to potentially add another stairs in data tracker, which is ready, so that you can still push results to it, but the image is marked ready, which means that with the JavaScript live filtering, you can just get the list of ready images in the UI, confirm that it matches your script.
So like instead,
Well, you can get it with the API as well. You're going to get like stickers 5 or whatever, just get it.
so like instead of going through and like disabling the ones that we don't want to publish, we would go through and
Say,
Click
ready to
sign
go,
off
ready
the
to go,
ones we
ready to
want.
go.
So ready, that's where we can keep the other ones getting results. They can get the non-ready images can still get results,
Right, okay.
because they're not marked for respins. And the ready images can also still get results because they're not just marked as ready.
So would that replace the release manifest as well then?
No.
Because we
release
won't have the sign-off stuff in it.
Yeah. It's a question of the release team is signing off based on what they're seeing from QA, based on what they're seeing from that, but they think the images are ready to go. You still need the management of the product owner signing off saying, and the product tester being explicit.
So I thought that's what you said about being ready.
Well, when we knew that they were ready, we were moving them to that state. And so,
We're basically doing both. Usually someone does a claim, marks them as ready on the tracker, and then we ask for the product contact to sign them off on the wiki so that we can confirm that. The right person grabs everything on the
Is that
tracker.
logic which actually belongs in the ISO tracker rather than a wiki page?
the marking it ready will make it easier for the scripting to see it, and that was what we were trying to do by moving it from one
Right,
to
but
another.
I mean, can a product owner do sign off in the ISO tracker rather than doing it through the wiki?
It's possibly worth investigating. That's a good idea. Let's put that as in.
I certainly log the change, and I know who's been changing something
Right.
towards theirs already. So we could use that as the sign-off. But I'm guessing we're still going to have the release manifest anyway to list what product we actually built a few months before. So it's going to save us one column on the release manifest. It's going to save us the whole week.
The other side of it too is that there's a bunch of other information on the manifest that isn't on the ISO tracker.
Yeah.
Like where things get published, what feeds, and so forth. And maybe
And
they.
length of support, that kind of stuff.
Right. Okay. I think we've got that one. So there'll be more talking about that, I think, in the ISO tracker session. And then Gemma had a long discussion that got started on the white pad. And there's a QA release communication improvements. I think we should catch most of those issues.
Yeah, let's just have it all in there, because I think that might take us...
I figured it was going to take a whole session. Okay. Then the other thing that was a bit of a churn was the ARM server. The OMAP forward's changing on the day of the release, and I think that turns back into better interlock with PES in the manifest discussions.
It wasn't so much a problem that it was changed on the day of release, it was that the problem wasn't noticed earlier.
Right.
Because it went back.
And then there was other follow-on issues with the announce and so forth that had to be dealt with. Okay, let's see. The next one down is Scott's asking about the pad. Because and there was times when it was exceptionally frustrating. The wiki was a little bit more frustrating on some of these things. And so we need some better technology here, I think.
Is that on, that using pad.ubuntu.com?
Right.
Yeah.
And it didn't used to be so bad, like in the previous release milestones even. So it's a fairly recent regression that it kicks you out after half an hour or so.
So that was sort of originally built to be integrated into Summit. So it was, and over the next cycle, one of the things we're going to be talking about this week is rebuilding that around Pad Lite.
Excellent.
Be a different technology and have different integration with OpenID for single sign-on. So I think that will change over the next cycle.
Hopefully we'll have a nice side effect of what the bug is occurring at the same time.
It will probably introduce new problems. But we'll also try and migrate all the pad data from one to the other.
There is a script to do that.
I know there is, yes.
Okay. The one thing that was very, very handy on the pad side this time was the ability to do history. And be able to look at the history of what had happened, even if you weren't there, because by the end, when you basically came in, you got the current state, and if you needed to see what had changed over time, you could scroll back in history. So please preserve that.
History will be there in the new one.
Please preserve that. Okay. So it sounds like there's not. And the issues was the single sign-on and working with that. Not clear that the ISO trackers, what tests have been done in which environment. I think some of that will be talked about in the hardware profiles, or is you talked about something else here too?
Kind of. I think what's confused Scott on that one is that I'm doing automated flavor testing. That's pushing results for upgrades for all products, all the flavors. And if you don't actually go look at the description that says it's automated testing, you don't actually know what it is. And you could assume that someone did the full upgrade test with an actual environment.
So the issue, I think, is actually bigger than that. Because automated testing is great, but there still needs to be an element of manual testing.
Yes.
Everyone agrees with that.
We might want to just duplicate the test case.
So hang on.
Have one test case for automated, one test case for manual.
Well, what I'm saying is that I think there should be an extra value, a boolean that says automated true or false, because I think there were many automated tests that by visual inspection appeared as if they were manual tests. It's only when you saw the Jenkins URL actually as the test results you thought, that was automated. So it would be nice to see a distinction between auto and manual.
Right. I think we should be able to get away with that just by using the other profile properly, because we can currently link every result with another profile. And I've got an action, topic for discussion this afternoon in the Esotracker session on getting proper reporting for by hardware in the tracker. So it should be easy to make it more visible that some stuff were tested.
Yeah, but it will say auto manual. It will say that?
We can make it show some penalties.
Okay. Then Scott's asking.
Assuming people don't file stuff manually. Because my results actually pushed through the API. Jean-Baptiste's results, last I checked, were filed manually based on automated testing. And that's not going to set the flag. So we need to make sure stuff are pushed the right way, and that's not automated testing that are being filed as manual testing. But yeah, we can definitely do that.
Then Scott's asking for any test cases of upgrade notification and upgrade process that the end user will use. So I think some of this needs to possibly be looked at in the QA sections on some of what manual testing is important.
Well, we also saw the issue with distro info, which we noticed was broken on the day of release.
That's because we got the name of the new release after freeze. Or after the final freeze.
Final freeze, yeah.
There's nothing we can do about that.
Well, no. It was a date issue, wasn't it?
No, because the same thing would have happened the next day as well. It was saying the query that was failing was what is the current development release. Because at the point when we last had an opportunity to update distro data, we didn't know what it was going to be. Okay, there was you could argue that maybe it shouldn't have failed for the 12 hours and 4 minutes before release on that day, but it was also failing after that point.
But in addition, distro info is designed to be lightweight, that you can easily update stuff. So the fact that the name was released after final freeze,
We had a 0-day SRCU as soon as we knew the new name.
We couldn't. Yes, it was lightweight, but it was also on some images, and at that point we didn't want to respend for it.
On the plane here, I did make a bunch of tools that are using it a whole lot more resilient to lack of data.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay, so what do we want to do on this one? Is there any actions we want to take?
Sorry, which item are we on? Because I didn't see the destroyed.
Scott K wants to have a fake changelog sort of version of
that I think would be a great idea. It's very, it's actually quite cumbersome to test Update Manager changes at the moment. I don't know if Michael will do it.
As for the NIP test cases for build notification part, I mean that's just a question of Ubuntu and the other updating the wiki page to have that in the test case.
I mean, you actually, if you're testing it locally, you can drop in. There's a few magic files that you can create to make it look somewhere else, but it's not really very well documented.
Well, actually, their magic files do need to be written up how it's done, because every release that's someone just left to the last minute.
No, but this is something different. This is for for developer testing.
Yeah, but on a side note, that's something we tend to say. Oh, no one's done that. The meta files.
We deliberately, it's on the checklist to be done at the last minute.
Yeah, but
it's absolutely intentional.
Okay, but last time was a bit too last minute. This cycle, wasn't it?
I think so.
Okay.
Michael is usually sitting there waiting to press
the button.
There is no last minute. It's too last minute to change.
I thought you actually used an expletive this cycle and said it hasn't been done yet. Okay, I might have misremembered that.
I don't believe so. There was I think there was something possibly related, but no, meta release was fine.
So I think the next issue from Scott was due to there only being a small number of RML build systems. There's a whole backlog. I think
we actually have a session about that anyway.
Okay, can you put the session underneath that so it links in?
That would be
awesome. Okay, then let's go on to the next one, and then we need to look at unseeded uploads and revisit that. I'm actually kind of comfortable with where it was.
I agree with Scott on this. It was, we actually went beyond the original deadline anyway, and it didn't cause any kind of problem at all.
So one of the things which I was talking with Scott about specifically, he was confused about the rationale for freezing things, having a hard freeze deadline when we did. My recollection was that the only reason we have the hard freeze is that we have to make sure the build is EPS and get everything.
Right.
And that's the only reason to have a freeze.
Way back, it used to be that, and I think some of this habit has persisted without people remembering why it's there, so I mentioned it. At one point, we had to have days grace before release in order for James to import the archive into the old archive infrastructure, into DAC, so that we could do security support, and that took ages, so we needed a window for it. As soon as we switched to security in Soyuz, then that window vanished, and that was one of the reasons to do that. So, yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, there's no reason to worry about anything other than making sure that the buildies have time to build everything.
So I think it was a late server team upload, or something that was to Universe, and I looked at it, it was sensible, and architecture all packaged with no building impact, so I went in and accepted it as the deadline. Scott queried me about it, and that's when I said, like, I don't see any reason why we actually need to.
And Adam and I were doing work past that deadline on making everything consistent, which I think is a higher.
Well, it's still good to have a.
Well, like I say, the question
I think
is.
it's good to have a freeze, so in the sense that we have all the other freezes, that from now on we have to manually control what's going in, not that it's absolutely closed.
Well, we have to anyway.
Actually, I remember the question Scott raised was about whether having archive churn and having an archive having a mirror pulse for 24 hours before release would cause issues.
So that was brought up. That came up in discussions this cycle. I don't remember anybody raising that as an issue before.
Who raised that issue this time?
I'm not sure. But I mean, we're going to have a mirror pulse right at the end anyway for to update the release file.
Also, zeroing the SRUs in there. The only thing that it increases the size of the sync because the packages file in the main archive, which is much larger than the updates files. It basically means the package files will probably account for half the size of the sync at that point. But it's such a small thing compared to the archive that I don't think it's negligible.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we're looking at starting discussion off on Ubuntu release about resetting the timing of that specific checkstone.
We can probably reset the definition of what we mean by this freeze.
Yeah.
That's a good
It's
point.
called final freeze, right? We're treating it really differently to the other final freeze. This final freeze we mean deadline, and the other one we mean now we're manually reviewing everything.
Yeah.
And then we could probably unify the two definitions, and that's probably what we want.
We definitely do something to make sure we're communicating this to the rest of the community in a way that they understand if they upload past this deadline, it's probably not going to make it in because, we have to allow for the package to have to build. So we need to give ourselves a grace period there and set it far enough back that people are not going to be surprised that their upload was rejected for this reason.
And we should probably refer to the SOU criteria for, that state of the cycle, whether or not it's fits the SOU criteria, perhaps.
Possibly.
Although SRU criteria are actually much more relaxed than
Yeah.
what we originally in that window.
Yeah, but I'm saying that have a criteria.
So, yeah, I think let's move this discussion onto the Ubuntu release mail list and then basically refine it there so we can get through a few more of these. Okay, the next one was from Stefan, and it looks like it needs to be a discussion with IS, and I think we
Yeah,
covered
that's
it
what I
today.
was mentioning before, that we moved everything, pretty much everything from releases to CDMH, and CDMH is still served by a single server, or single IP at least, and it's dying after 2 minutes.
I think it is actually more than one back-end machine. But
on release day, it was resorting to one IP that might have been served by more than one machine, but yes. It still dies after a few seconds every time, so a few minutes every time.
So
either getting more hardware or at least making mirroring easier so that we can get some more people to there.
So is Scott here or
No, he wasn't able to make it, so I don't know if he's
not.
online or not.
So I actually disagree with what he said there. He said that had a negative impact on release week. I don't think that's fair. It did put extra pressure on other teams on the weeks leading up to release week, but to imply that it had a negative impact on release week, I think he's...
we had at least one respin for mass.
Yeah, but is that really a negative effect on release week? I think he's been a bit too emotive there, which I don't think is helpful.
We can quibble about the wording, but it was a problem that we encountered in release week that we needed to fix, and ideally I think we can agree that firstly, ideally we have no problems. Secondly, we probably aren't ever going to get there.
But I would like to fully understand what pressures that put on teams outside the serve team.
The main thing I heard was that it was another respin that QA had to understand why.
QA didn't really
was going on.
Yeah, actually, we reversed it altogether.
Well, another effect of this was that it put quite a lot of pressure on the MIR teams to sort out the remaining 4.
This was leading up to release.
Well, it was done basically on the day before release day. So at that point, there wasn't really an option to say no to any of the packages anymore, because they were pretty much forced to go.
The Horizon stuff didn't get sorted out until the day before release.
Okay.
So I think that was related to this.
So,
and in order to fix some MIR issues, we needed some more Horizon uploads.
Is there an action we can take to make things better next time, or is it is what it is?
Well, the thing is, it was well communicated with the release manager that it was something that was expected to be landing late in the cycle.
We knew that it's not like there was an opportunity to say no. But
yeah, I mean, how could that have been handled differently? I mean, we knew it was going to be coming in late, and with that constraint, it got out of the door. And I don't think that other than, I do feel bad for the work it put into the security team and the MIR team to actually get it in past the normal part of the cycle. I don't think it put any extra, considering it had to happen. I think it was handled the best it could have been handled.
I think Scott is understandably working off a different set of axioms. You're working from the axiom that this had to land. Scott is within his rights, I think, not to accept that as an axiom.
Yeah, but then he needs to speak to the project leader. I mean,
Sure. But he's bringing it up in a reasonable way. You have an axiom which means you had to work with what you were given, and that's fine. But I think it's reasonable to say, look, this was a problem, it caused a problem, we need to do it.
yeah, I think he's perhaps over-exaggerating the issues that it caused.
Okay, I don't think we're going to be able to solve anything right here, and we're running out of time. I think the next one is the documentation on the Etherpad, more visibility, and I think we've got sessions on the ISO tracker and the testing process that should handle that one. Then Effenberg 0x0, who I don't know yet, has got some issues that are coming in, and it looks like there are specs lined up for discussing those, if I'm reading this properly. Does anyone know, is he here, or she here, who Effenberg 0x0 is? Okay.
That's somebody I've seen. I noticed that person subscribed to a lot of specs, but not registered as.
Okay.
Yeah, Kate, I think those are being discussed already, so I don't think we have to take time.
Right, okay. And then, there's another one, okay. And then, there's a few more that have been added. It looks like the proposed sessions for Bilal's, okay, K-Computes is there. So, I'm wondering if we need a follow-up session to keep on with some of these, or just some of these. I think we're pretty close to the end.
Yeah, I mean, these aren't really release team centered items.
So what about the building pressure at the end from the native PPAs?
Yeah, we didn't actually go into that. We skipped over that.
That's because there's a session later about that.
There's a session about that explicitly.
Okay. Which I linked in there.
Right.
Yoko-Zar, we had a session about improving the issue you've outlined there earlier on today.
What was the session? Do you have
this is
improvements.
So you mean this is during the release, like during the development of a release, not after release, yeah?
Right.
But this is pretty much a part of the use proposed so often for the important packages, which cause constant pain if they...
Okay.
Not all.
It's going to end up being nearly every library if you're trying to avoid multi-arch, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I
not
think
even
we're
that,
out of
perhaps.
time, and I think we're going to pass off. So, thank you very much, everyone, for some excellent input, and we'll try to get this